So, welcome to 20-Minute Mondays and a special guest, Patrick Bosek from a company formerly known as Jorsek. How are you, Patrick?
Well, a company formerly known as EasyDita by Jorsek.
Ah,
I think most people know us as Jorsek, but I'm well. Thanks, Jack. How are you?
I'm good. So, how are things? You're in New York, right?
Yeah, Rochester, New York. So upstate near the lake for people who aren't super familiar with Rochester.
Nice. So, tell me about some new news in your neighborhood.
Yeah, sure. So we have rebranded. EasyDita is been the primary brand for our product and therefore mostly for the company for about, I don't know, somewhere around 10 years. And this summer we transitioned to a new brand, which is Heretto. This brand transition is largely representational, not a new direction, but kind of an evolution of our direction, which we think mirrors the evolution of the marketplace. So the technical content marketplace for a long time has really been focused on like user manuals and all that kind of like, in the box kind of stuff, even though it probably hasn't been in very many boxes for many years.
Right.
And we kind of saw the marketplace starting to shift so that it's more of a hybrid team-based center of excellence function. And you're not seeing really highly siloed teams between like technical content and support and knowledge and like these types of things and learning in the future. And we've really seen a much more integrated approach. We also believe in this approach. So, we wanted to update our brand to kind of match the new direction and hopefully be a major provider of value in this direction, well into the future.
Sounds good. Now, I'm guessing not everybody knows what a center of excellence is. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, a center of excellence in an organization is typically a group that does something really, really well. And I mean, I know that seems like kind of a very simple definition, but it really is just that simple. And I think one of the things that we like about describing, like the information development or knowledge services or information services or learning services or whatever it is that you call the center of excellence as a center of excellence is that it really kind of gets to the heart of the value that it provides to the organization and to the customer, right? Like the idea that support people should be maintaining the knowledge base that our customers read, and then they should go to another place for like the official documentation. Like it's really not a good customer experience, right? So when you kind of change it and you think of like putting these materials in front of all the people who use them, which is both internal and external, as being something that you should be excellent at, and you need people who specialize in that, and they need to be grouped together in such an organizational way that they provide that value very efficiently and at the highest possible quality. I think that this is a mental shift that's really beneficial for a lot of organizations, and that's why I personally really like referring to this model as kind of a center of excellence approach to these knowledge, product reference and knowledge materials.
Very cool. Now, you mentioned silos earlier. How many silos in an organization are we pulling together into the center of excellence?
I think that really depends on the organization. So, I think that one of the challenges that we've seen historically is that silos kind of grow up around the tools that the tribes who create the silos use. And that's natural, right? So one of the reasons we've seen a lot of like knowledge bases maintained by support people is because the knowledge base they had available to them was like the wiki that came with their support application, right? And this is very common for organizations that use like Salesforce or ServiceNow, some other of those types of systems, Zendesk even too. People don't buy the support ticketing and service system, like the help desk system, for the knowledge base. Once they have it, they have this knowledge base that comes with it. And those range in terms of quality and complexity, but they create silos regardless of how good they are. So even, I would say the Zendesk probably has the best knowledge base utility or tool built into their help desk software from a functionality perspective and also user experience perspective. But if you use it, you still create a silo.
Correct.
So you're still not allowing that knowledge to permeate in other places. And a great example of that is like onboarding, right? So if you have, even if you have people who are like really devoted to maintaining a knowledge base inside of support, they're probably not taking that exact same content and moving it over to the onboarding team and making sure that when the customer is onboarded, they're getting delivered the same consistent message that they're going to go and reference in the future. And I think that we all kind of inherently know, but don't think about it very often, that kind of consistency is really important, because if you're taught one thing in onboarding, and then when you go to reference something, it's a little different, like then you've got this cognitive dissonance you have to kind of like sort out before you can really make a good decision. And also the reference is what you might reference before you buy something, right? So you might reference it before you buy it and then get taught something else and then go back and reference the first thing. And like, that's a terrible customer experience. So your core question was how many silos? I mean, it can be a lot. Like it can be 10, 20 different silos that can get broken down. And they can create stores of information and processes, kind of in a content ops style approach that serve all of these endpoints. But I would say the typical organization, especially at a department level or like a product group level, right, you're going to see like somewhere around 4, 5 in that range. So it's kind of like learning, and then customer success often owns onboarding, and then support usually has their knowledge base, and then you got technical documentation. And then sometimes there's something else that's involved, like the policies or security procedures or something like that kind of flow into the whole thing. So it can be somewhere in that like 4, 5, 6 range. Oh, we have chatbots now. Oftentimes they're doing their own thing too. They're off like building a chatbot, and then like every so often they update it, but it doesn't say the things in the knowledge base. So there's a 6th one sometimes.
Yeah, not to mention an audio interface on a Google search.
And sometimes those are separate. Sometimes those are the chatbot. It depends on the infrastructure you're using.
My favorite cross silo failure is for LavaCon. We were out of town one time and one of the LCD projectors broke. So I just went out to buy a new one, but it was a purchase that was out of my normal spending pattern in a state I don't normally go to, and the credit card disallowed the purchase.
Yeah.
So now I just tell them when I'm traveling. The problem is if you go to their website, it says specified travel dates. Yeah. If you go to their 800 number, the option is fraud management. First of all, I want to prevent my fraud, not manage it, but they're not even calling the same thing in the same company. So that having that consistent customer experience, firsthand, I know how that can go really well or really badly.
So the thing that's really funny is that example, the terminology management there is such a big deal. And like the simplest things are the things that can really break the experience. And I had a similar experience to this with a cell phone company recently, where I was trying to get something done and their app called something one thing and their support agent called it something else. And it's very, very clear they're reading off of 2 different sources, right? So like the app probably had this stuff, I don't know, coded into the app, maybe, hopefully not, but I mean, my money is on probably. And then the support person probably had a knowledge base that they were reading from. So it took us like a couple minutes to really figure out like what the other one was saying. And it all just came down to the fact that we were using 2 different terms for the thing I was looking for. And then in the end, they couldn't help me anyway. So like it was awesome. It was the best customer experience. But at least we could have gotten there faster, and they could have not helped me with a little more efficiency if we had gotten our terminology right.
On a related note, let's talk about findability. Because we ship a lot of things to the conference, I wanted to go and print off a manifest, make sure everything arrived. And for the life of me, I could not find where to find the shipping history. So FedEx.com had a chatbot, and it said your virtual chatbot. So good. Don't try to pretend you're a human if you're not. And I said, how do I find my shipping history? And it said, oh, just create a new shipment and then click on shipping history. And I finally figured out why they did that. It's because they put a layer over their legacy software to make it more mobile friendly.
Yeah.
And they didn't have room for shipping history on the initial thing. So you actually had to go into the legacy system. And thankfully they had a chatbot. So one of the challenges I want to ask you about is how do you, as a vendor provider, handle search across multiple silos?
Yeah, so that is a really, really good question. And it's one that we could have spent many 20-minute Mondays on. But I think the really simple thing to say here is that I think a lot of organizations want to think of search as like this one monolith thing, right? Like, oh, we'll buy a search appliance, or oh, we do this for search. But it really isn't. Like, search is very channel and endpoint and experience dependent, and they all have to interact a little bit differently. So what you see modern implementations do is you see them implement a variety of technologies, but it all really comes back to having effective metadata in the background. So you may have a situation where you have like a unified like web experience, which pulls in a number of different sources, and that may be leveraging an enterprise ontology or taxonomy that kind of coordinates all of those sources around a specific set of facets or terminology that allows for users at different points in like that unified portal to get to the things that they want to get to. But at the same time, you're going to have an app, and that portal probably isn't going to serve that app in the exact same way. And you may have a much more specific search experience in that app. And that app is still going to have awareness and access to the same like kind of knowledge infrastructure, so the content operations ecosystem, which really comes down to, again, to that taxonomy and then the metadata that's woven into the actual content. So as a vendor, what we really do is we kind of specialize in a couple areas of this. So our software, at the end of the day, is really the content source system. And we provide the ability to take in structured sets of metadata. So like a taxonomy represented in an open format, and apply that to the source content. Now, we don't have to be the only content source that is in a content ecosystem, but typically we're the content source for like learning content, knowledge content, product content, reference content, that kind of stuff. Anything which kind of falls into that like reference, broad knowledge area of content. And we have a very robust metadata layer that sits over it. And because it's structured content, it's data, it also can be woven into it. And then that's exposed over an API to whatever delivery systems you're using. So you'll have content, you'll have the content source, content services, and then you'll have apps, which are kind of your implementation. Your website's an app, your support system's an app, whatever, right? So you kind of flow all of these things through, and you allow those applications to leverage this infrastructure in the way that makes the most sense for that user at that particular moment in time. And I think that's kind of the modern approach to search. Like the idea that you're going to have one intent engine or one, kind of single point that's going to provide you all the access you could possibly need to findability. I don't think that's reasonable. I don't think it's going to stand the test of time for most organizations.
I would absolutely agree with that. So we got a little techie. Let's pull it back a little bit and said, all right, David Dylan Thomas did this great session once called Start with the Why. Oh, we need this. Why? What problem are you trying to solve? Right? So I'm going to put this back on you. If someone is looking for your services, what problem are they experiencing that you can help them solve?
Yeah, sure. So it's typically an omni-channel problem is the core problem that we solve. So you want to create content once and you want it to go to all these different places, and you want it to be flexible enough to support whatever experience you have now or you may have in the future. Like that's really the core problem. There's also some like efficiency and cost savings. So you save a lot of money and you save a lot of time localizing that content and getting it out to those channels. But when it comes right down to it, you use our software so that you have a friendly, efficient way to create content in an open standard, which is structured, and then flow that content through to all the places that your users are going to use it. And that can be your website. That's going to be, probably via our APIs. It can be a knowledge base, and that can be a more direct representation, or it can be through another tool. So like we can send content into things like ServiceNow or Zendesk or something like that. It may be through some type of a unified portal system. So like that could be like a Zoom in, or something along those lines. It could be all of those things. It's very common for our implementations to push content out to like zoom in and then to something else, then to some microsites or something like that. So at the end of the day, one of the things that we've seen through research, I think probably the biggest study we've seen in this has been through Gartner, is that the number of channels typically correlates to a degradation in user experience.
Correct.
But this is not because more channels is bad. This is because there's inconsistency between channels. So what you're really doing with our software is you're enabling a consistent customer and user experience across all the channels that your customers demand. They're not going to decide they're all going to go to your website for everything. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, customers are in different places, so you're going to have different channels. And so the smart organizations are going to use a system like ours to make sure that you're saying the same thing and it's a great experience every place that your user and your customer is.
Okay, good. So a little joint plug here. I do believe you are exhibiting at LavaCon this year. Can people stop by your booth to get a demo?
Virtually, right?
Virtually.
Okay,
Yeah, we're
yeah.
doing virtual one more time.
I know. I can't wait until next year. We're all
Well,
back to.
we'll be in New Orleans in 2022, so it's a good one to come back to.
I will be there.
Excellent.
Yeah, that is a promise.
All right, Patrick, thank you for your 20 minutes.
Oh, all right.
And I'll throw up a splash screen at the end of this with your contact information and a discount code if anyone wants to come to virtual LavaCon this year.
Great. Thanks for having me, Jack. Good talking to you.
My pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye.